Welcome back. Fabulous new book, Charter Schools and Their Enemies, by the great Dr. Thomas Sowell. You might say, well, I don't have kids in school anymore. Well, I'm focused on this other side. This is the key. Educating our children is the key. What they're learning, how they're learning, where they're learning is the key. Every parent and grandparent knows this to be the case. And unless we fix this, unless we really take effort to reform this as a nation, the same thing is going to happen. In fact, it's going to get worse and worse generation to generation, which leads me to my question, Dr. Sowell, generation to generation. The same thing over and over again. Big government schools, centralization, the Democrat Party in bed with the unions feeding the Democrat Party and vice versa in order to break this. Most of what we're talking about is happening in cities, and most of what we're talking about is happening in inner cities, poor areas, minority areas. Can we call this bigotry?
I don't think it's so much ideological as it is just raw self-interest. In fact, some of the officials who tried to block and have succeeded in blocking charter schools from using vacant buildings that have been vacant for years, I have said, we can't be helping our competition. So you put the people who are in charge of the existing system in charge of making rules for charter schools. And then they make such rules as will prevent those students from being able to get into the charter schools. They're focused. There's the old argument, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, the motto for charter schools is, if it ain't broke, then break it. Because, otherwise the students leave.
You think this would be tolerated in other communities? Poor communities, people can't leave in many cases. They're immobile because of financial reasons and other reasons. In other parts of the country, people get up and leave, or they pick their home based on the school system and so forth. This is why I raise this issue. I watched the head of the AFT. She's a left-wing white woman. I watched Joe Biden. He's become left-wing, a white guy. I see Nancy Pelosi and Schumer and all these people. And then I see leftists who are also black, who are part of this collusion with the unions. But still, if there's quote-unquote systemic racism, it seems to me, and we agree that's nonsense, but it seems to me when you look at the inner cities, something systemic is going on. Maybe it's not in their best interest, but it seems to be applicable mostly to one group of people, particularly black people.
Well, wherever the family income is high enough that people can afford private schools, the parents know that. The traditional public schools know that, and so there'll be some quality level maintained in those communities precisely because there is always the implicit threat that they're going to lose students, which means they're going to lose money and they're going to lose jobs. So the circumstances are just radically different. And it's one of the reasons that they're fighting so much to prevent black kids, for example, from going to parochial schools with government support. It's not so much about religion. It's about the fact that the traditional Catholic parochial schools, many of them have low enough tuition that people of moderate income can afford, with a little sacrifice, to send their kids there. And so that produces competition. And what they don't want above all else is competition.
And isn't this what we see really across the board, or almost across the board, with the left? That is, whether it's healthcare, no competition. Whether it is other activities, no competition. Whether it's schooling, no competition. Even when you get to universities and colleges, of which there's obviously thousands, they demand adherence to an ideology. They demand adherence to a set of standards. And free speech, freedom of association, depending on who's doing the speaking and who's doing the associating, is supported or opposed. Isn't this a problem across the board when it comes to the left?
Oh, absolutely. And in my career, I have seen it develop. I mean, when I went to teaching at Cornell in 1965, we had people of all kinds of persuasions just in the economic department. When I left there was an orthodoxy that was put in there, and if you didn't agree with it, you were just out of luck in terms of your career. I saw one wonderful young woman, courageous, who stood up for the standards and the academic standards and behavioral standards. They made it impossible. They not only fired her, they made it impossible for her to get another job anywhere else.
And this is happening in an extreme way right now as a result of last month with Antifa, with Black Lives Matter. And we see it happening across our culture and across our society. We'll be right back.